Headline hash today starts in the politics of pot. Michael Moore agrees with this show. Put marijuana on the ballot to drive voter turnout in 2020. Kyle Yeager, writing in Marijuana Moment, caught the documentary filmmaker on the last word this week on MSNBC, and he pointed out how they drove millennial turnout this election.
This is what we did in Michigan 2 weeks ago. We had a ballot proposal to legalize marijuana. Largest turnout of young people in we don't know when.
Right. Came out to the polls.
Vote. So many people came out that didn't vote in 2016. And they came out. This is the way you bring people out who are, they don't vote that much, or they don't like the politicians, or the Democratic Party has not been responsive to them.
Right.
They could vote on a particular issue. So we need on the ballot in 2020. Have ballot proposals, especially in the swing states, for legalizing marijuana, for free college.
Michigan starts legal marijuana in early December 6th, I believe. Further east, lifelong prohibitionist turned pro-pot politician Joe Kennedy has seen the green as Massachusetts begins its like clockwork rollout of recreational marijuana sales. Kennedy talked to Kush on Keller and explained the status quo has failed.
Look, am I ever going to love the legalization and the broadening of marijuana policy? No, candidly, I'm not. But this comes down to the fact that states aren't turning back and that status quo is not working. And if that's the case, I think it is time for the federal government to say, hey, let's try to make sure we put the proper safeguards and consumer protections in place that just at the moment the federal government is absent on.
Welcome to the party, Joe. Did you bring some weed? Meanwhile, another Massachusetts rep and new chair of the Rules Committee says the House is going to have the votes on marijuana reform. And after promising debate, particularly on veterans issues, Kyle Yeager over at Marijuana Moment, he pointed out there are several new chairs that are coming into this blue wave that are friendly to marijuana regulations, including Maxine Waters, who's expected to chair the House Financial Services Committee, who told the Wall Street Journal that it is inevitable they're going to have to talk about how federal prohibition contributes to banking issues in legal cannabis industry. And over at the House Judiciary Committee, the expected incoming chairman is Jerry Nadler, recently said that marijuana and other soft drugs should be legalized and regulated. This time they better listen to Michael Moore and make cannabis their top priority for the next session and the election. Moving to our cannabis neighbor in the South, Mexico. Marijuana Business Daily reports that a smooth ride can be expected in Mexico for new cannabis legislation. Last week, a bill was introduced to legalize marijuana in all forms. If approved, Mexico would be the third country to legalize recreational cannabis. Quote, "This is the most important news of the moment in the cannabis industry worldwide," said the CEO of Canadian company Chiron. "We don't expect much resistance in the bill to Congress." Former President Vicente Fox, who sits on the board of Chiron, expects the law to be approved in the first half of 2019. And speaking of Canada, until the explosion of medical cannabis research that is going to be happening, and Chela's going to talk about it in her talk, Canadian nurses, they've been picking up the slack in order to educate people up there in Canada. But apparently, since legalization, there's going to be a gigantic explosion of research in Canada. Since 2001, of course, doctors have been terrified to talk about it. And you've had to jump through the hoops, just like here in America, to do any research. That is over. And starting now, all you got to do is just say you want to grow some this cannabis to research. And there you go. You have got research happening in Canada. So Mexico is not far behind. Canada and Uruguay, and that is the headline hash.
Smoke weed every day.
But I think it worked out.
Yeah, I'm excited that Canada is excited about all the research that they're allowed to do now. They're boasting that they're the first G7 nation able to do the kind of research that everybody really wants. Everybody wants more research on cannabis. So it's exciting.
That's one thing that everyone calls for. More research.
More research, more research. So now Canada is free to do that research. And that's great. I do hope that doctors do catch up with the nurses with their education so that people can be helped right away. Like we heard at CanMed 2018 at UCLA last month, Dr. Cox from Canada was saying that the medical community has to look at cannabis differently than other drugs that they've brought to market because the horse has left the barn, as it were. So I hope that they take a different approach than traditional models of research and take advantage of the vast population that's already been using cannabis for 20 years.